All right. Very happy to welcome back Mr. Shawn Knoche from the oddsbreakers.com. Shawn, we are here, my man. We have a bracket. How was your weekend?
It's been fantastic. Went really good this week. Conference championship games, 5-2-1 the last couple of days. Ended up 13 units this week. The couple weeks before that were a little rough, but we had a good close to the college basketball season right before the tournament. So loving it, ready to go for this week, and the tournament is here. So
the tournament is here, man. Any hot takes from the recap? Anything you just kind of stuck out to you from the weekend?
You know, there were a couple of groupings that I really liked. I follow a lot of the West Coast stuff. So with the Pac-12 being non-existent, and those groups being in the Big Ten, I follow a lot of the Mountain West. And, I think both of us had Colorado State coming out of that tournament with a nice little cash there. I think they're a team to look at to win that first round matchup. I think the seeding got a little goofy there with Memphis and Colorado State as a 5-12. That was the big take on the West side of things. Obviously, the Big Ten tournament, the top four teams almost made it through Wisconsin, hammering UCLA early, our Badgers. And then both teams pulling up today and just looking awful down the stretch. I'm sorry, but the Big Ten drought for tournament champions is going to continue. They are not at the level where they need to be for any of those top four teams.
Dude, it's bad. I know before you came on the intro, I talked about it briefly. I mean, Michigan and Wisconsin played so bad that any of these, even the 16 seeds in this tournament, would have beat them today. It was freaking brutal, and it was a disgusting game to watch. 15 for 68, Now, the weird thing about Wisconsin is they're so freaking Jekyll and Hyde. If there's like up and down waves that you can see on a graph, the wave would go all the way down to like in the 200s, where the teams in the 200s can beat them, and then it would go all the way up to probably number 3 or 2 that they can upset almost anybody. It's tough, and but you know what you're going to get, and they said 4 days rest, or 4 games in a row, and I said, well, they put themselves in that situation by losing to Penn State. It's like, yeah, you got to play 4 days in a row in this tournament, and unfortunately, you didn't get the vibe, but it's not like Michigan looked any better either. So the Big Ten's as ugly as they come right now, Shawn.
No, our Badgers are Grinnell College, right? If they're making threes, they're going to beat anybody in the tournament, but they can turn around and do what they did today, and that's what you get, right? I mean, when you take half of your fucking shots from, pardon my language, half of your shots from three, it's not a good mix if you're not hitting them. So we saw what they can do against UCLA. We saw what they can't do today.
Absolutely. Well, look, I ask you every year, and you can just touch on it briefly. What kind of bracket games are out there that you like to play, and maybe some creative ones?
Yeah, so my favorites are the Survivors and the Calcuttas. We're in a big Calcutta, big old group. We call them conglomerates. So there's 8 different conglomerates. I think of a conglomerate as just a group of guys pooling their money together, and we go out and we buy teams. And we start with the 16 seeds and work our way up to the 1 seeds. And you can buy anybody you want if you got enough money. But if you like a 12 seed to go to the Sweet 16, you can invest a small amount of money on them. And they get there, they're going to pay more on that return. Kiev has had the NCAA tournament winner the last 2 years, obviously. Same group. And we didn't buy them either of those years, unfortunately, even though Kiev was sponsoring the pool and helping our bankroll a little bit. But so that's my favorite is the Calcutta, because you can have anybody you want if you want to pony up the cash. The Survivor challenges are fun. You pick a different team each day till you get to the Elite Eight, and then you got to pick 2 teams, and it can be either side of the days for the Elite Eight. There's usually multiple winners in that if you get in a big enough pool, but I think those are the most 2 fun games. NCAA Tournament Survivor and just doing a Calcutta, because if you only want one team and you can find a Calcutta that you like and you want to throw in enough money to buy that team, they're yours. And if they do well, you get return on that investment.
100%. Calcuttas are fun because of that. And, it starts paying as it goes. The thing is that if you pay a lot for a team and they get bounced early, you might not get a return. You might lose money. And somebody's losing money every year. It's not like it's a perfect situation.
right? When you told me to take UConn the last 2 years, and I ended up with Houston both years, and they didn't get out of the Sweet 16. So hey, here we are. Maybe we should try Houston again. Third time in a row's a charm. You never know.
Well, I don't like UConn this year. Is that fair?
That's fair enough. You just tell me who you want. We'll go from there.
All right, we'll see if we can bid some fools now. Oh, that's fine. I love the Calcutta. Obviously, the Survivor is easy to explain. You know, you start and some will start on Friday, most start on Thursday, and we have a few up on the website. And I'm going to give them your buddies again that we pushed in last year. Thanks to we had to do 2 picks in that Elite Eight, and unfortunately, you know, I had Purdue in the one, and I was burning that. And then in the finals, I was going to have UConn, right? And then unfortunately, it was either Elite Eight or it was they lost to NC State.
Yep.
NC State, and so we split it 8 ways or 10 ways or something. And me and Shawn were like the only people around with UConn still holding onto it, and it should have been ours to split.
It didn't work out that way, but
yeah, I know. We would have had I was always thinking like, well, I'm going to work out a deal with Shawn because it's going to be me and him after this week. Then Duke drops it to NC State just like a bunch of chokers. Oh, my God. Massive favorites. That's how it is, man. That's what makes the tournament special. And, you know, this Survivor we're doing here is going to actually eliminate that. If you all go out, it'll actually push and everybody gets to keep going until there's either one winner or basically one winner, or someone runs out because of that and making it one winner, or you split it at the very end. So that's called a Revival Survivor. That's what we're doing over at Splash Sports. So that's going to be a fun one, $20 a pop. And then there's pick'ems and upset brackets. I like the upset bracket we do over at the season because you multiply the seed, right? You multiply the seed times the round, and you get a Florida Atlantic team to go to the Final Four type thing again. Yeah, you pretty much won it. There's nobody beating you if you do that. So that's the cool thing about the upset bracket.
Yep, I like all those. Like I said, my Calcutta is my favorite thing to do. We do that on Wednesday night right before we get rolling with the main part of the tournament, and it's the most fun you can have. So if you can get out of Phoenix and make it up to Madison right before the tournament one year, we'd love to have you.
One of these days. It's just not warm enough there yet.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the committee, Shawn. And I'm going to ask you, how do you think the committee did this year?
You know, I think from a team perspective, I think they did just fine, right? If you look at rankings on KenPom or Haslematics, and the teams that got snubbed, right? They're the teams that haven't won the games that they probably should have, but they're higher ranked because they've beaten a couple good teams here and there. Ohio State, Northwestern, nobody was really putting them in the back bracket. More people were looking at Indiana just based on the record, right? But Ohio State's above them in KenPom. I really liked what they did. My biggest snub actually was Boise State. I thought they were the one team out of a smaller conference, played a tough schedule, and they could have got in there. But again, they beat Clemson early in the year. They beat St. Mary's early in the year in overtime. And then they really didn't have anything else because they were in conference. And that rest of that conference was, okay, but not as good as it was last year. So I think Boise State was my big snub. I don't think any of the Big Ten teams that didn't get in, Ohio State, Indiana, I don't have an issue with them. West Virginia, a lot of people were saying, was a big snub, and I look at their overall, they beat Gonzaga early and Kansas early, had a nice win against Iowa State, but they didn't really perform against anybody good in conference outside of that. And when you lose 13 games, they were the other big snub, I guess, Boise State and West Virginia. But I think they actually did really, really good with the teams they put in this year.
I disagree. I think they did terrible. And I don't. North Carolina shouldn't be in there. A 1-12 versus quad one for 12. I don't. It's not just that though. And they got the chairman of the committee went to North Carolina. That is absolute trap. That's like insider trading almost. It's like, seriously, North Carolina should not have been in there. Okay, I'm sorry, they sucked. They had their chances against Duke, and they lost all 3 of them. It's like they beat like a mid Big Ten team for their quadrant win against UCLA. That's their only one. Makes zero sense that North Carolina is in this, and that's just an absolute travesty. And a couple other things. I hate the SEC having 14. You know what's funny about the Big Ten? They had more teams in last year when they had 4 less teams. They had 8, and I think that's correct. I don't think Indiana should have won it, but I also don't think the bottom of the S. I think you have to make conference matter a little bit here. You're putting Texas in. Texas? They've been terrible down the stretch, and they proved it at home. They had to win to get in game against Oklahoma, and then they lost. Oklahoma goes there and wins. So I'm somewhat okay with Oklahoma, but the truth is, over half your conference going in. I don't disagree. I disagree with that because the truth is that these net ratings aren't always right, and you don't know really, minus looking at efficiency sites, how good other teams are. The sample sizes are just too small. I wanted to see. Go ahead.
They are, and for North Carolina, for me, and what the committee talks about is they look at the recent history too, right? Injuries in the last 10 games. And while North Carolina didn't beat anybody great the last 10 games, they still went 8-2 or 7-3 last 10 games. The losses are Clemson, Duke, and Duke. They're playing better basketball right now. And if they're looking at the last 10 games and how teams are performing down the stretch, I was kind of okay with it. But like you said,
no one's made the tournament in their last 10 games except any of their wins, though. I mean, all teams that didn't make it.
SMU and UCLA are the only 2 good wins. So everybody else they beat, like you said, wasn't in there. So you're right. That would be the one team I'd have out, and I'd have Boise State in. That would be the flop. But compared to previous years, I was pretty happy.
All right. Well, here's the thing. I wanted to see Boise State in. I'm okay with Northwestern out, Indiana out, SMU out. I think that I would have wanted to see UC Irvine in. It's not their fault that UC San Diego's so good. I want to see UC Irvine in instead of freaking Texas. Come on. You got to let these other teams that just have amazing records, 4 lost seasons type situations, able to go in this tournament, in my opinion.
Well, here's the devil's advocate, though. Look at UC Irvine, who they played non-conference. Nobody. Their best win non-conference,
it's not always their fault.
28-6, and your best win's Northern Iowa. I mean, I take that back. Best win was against San Diego. They beat them once, but other than that, Northern Iowa was your best win on your entire schedule at 28-6.
Yeah, I mean, very true, but it's not their fault. Their schedule was bad. And look, it's always been like this. I just think a team that wins this many games over a North Carolina or Texas or just a number of SEC teams, make these regular seasons mean more by not letting all these teams in the NCAA tournament. Don't get me wrong. I would probably bet Texas over UC Irvine if it was pick'em. I might. Right. But the tournament's got to be about more than that, because if it was just straight off freaking top teams, you would go by Ken Palm or something or tournament. No. Or something. Yeah, it's not like that. So I think it would be interesting to me. But the worst thing, I don't want them using this as an excuse to expand the tournament, because I don't want to expand it. I just want these crappy Big Ten teams out, these crappy SEC teams out, in my opinion, man. So there you have it. There's my rant. All right, so let's talk a little bit about one more thing. Are you okay with Michigan being a 5 seed?
Absolutely. I'm not okay with Memphis being a 5 seed either. This goes back to your committee argument here too, right? I mean, these guys, there's 5 games on Sunday, okay? A couple of them could have affected who got in, right? If George Mason wins today, right, that's going to change their bracket a little bit. If UAB wins today, that's going to change the bracket. And I'm not in the room, but my thought process is what they're doing is they are setting brackets on Saturday night based on what happens with the teams that aren't in the tournament. So there were 2 today. So they probably had, 4 different brackets depending on how that combination broke out. And Michigan somehow jumps up to a 5 winning the Big Ten. I think they probably had them on that line whether they won or not. And I think they got to do a better job of figuring out ahead of time where they're going to land teams no matter what happens that day. I think they're looking at Michigan as a 5 going, okay, well, if George Mason knocks off VCU, we move everybody down the line. If Michigan wins, we keep them there. I just don't see how they can do that. And even Memphis hasn't beaten anybody recently. They beat Michigan State early in the year, who you're not high on, Clemson early in the year, Mississippi. They've got some good wins on their schedule, but the American was so bad. How do you jump them to a 5 seed? Just based on the 29-5 record. Look
I
who they've
know.
played for the last 2 months.
It's
If they're in the
ridiculous.
Big Ten, they don't make the tournament. They're sitting there with Indiana.
Oh no. Oh no, they don't. Yeah, it's like they win their conference tournament, but put them as a 5 seed. I mean, I would love to play them if I'm a 12 seed. That's a great matchup for them. And Memphis is sitting there only as a dog to 12 seed.
They're a dog to a 12 seed, Colorado State.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're a dog. It's unreal. It's that's just a total mess up too. So 100% agreement there. What's sad? It's UC San Diego kind of got punished here a little bit too.
I agree.
Because why they get to play a very good, super tall Michigan team, with a really good coach that has Final Four experience when he was at FAU. That really screwed UC San Diego up. What's interesting, and we'll get to the betting part. Man, everyone's betting UC San Diego just like we thought. I mean, the spread opened at 3.5, it's down to 2.5, went through as the 3. Which is somewhat common in basketball, more common in football, clearly. But 3 is one of the common numbers in basketball. Two is number 1, 3 is 2. So it makes me feel like now that everybody's bet UC San Diego,
I'm not.
I know. I didn't know, but now I do. But I didn't. I wouldn't have guessed you were. I think you're the kind of guy that's more contrarian to what the public's doing. I almost want to bet Michigan, and I think that it's just so weird because it's 2.5 now. I mean, I think Michigan's going to feel a little disrespected. They're going to have, they were terrible today, but they weren't terrible when they beat freaking Maryland. They weren't terrible in their first game against Illinois.
No,
or not Illinois. It was Purdue.
Purdue.
Yeah, Michigan's got the size to beat them. They can hit threes too, and I don't know. I might stay away from the game, but for a bracket now, I kind of want to pick Michigan because I think everybody's picking this upset.
So for me, we talk about this sometimes, personally in our side betting and stuff. I live in Wisconsin, and my family goes to bed early, and I like to stay up and watch West Coast basketball. So I've watched a ton of Big West and Mountain West, and those are the games I get to actually watch in person when I don't have any other interruptions on the home front. And UC San Diego is big across the lineup for 5, but they're small when it comes to the guys inside. They run 6'8", 6'8" inside as their tallest players. And they are not going to be able to hang inside with Michigan. They're going to have to hit all their threes. Their guards are big. They run 6'6", 6'4", 6'5". But they are going to have to hit threes to win that game. And I think Michigan's going to be able to lock them up. No matter what happened today against Wisconsin, the size inside is going to be the difference in that game. So I am not taking UC San Diego at all in this game. I'm actually already betting Michigan minus 2.5.
Well, look at that.
First free play give out. They just don't have the size to hang inside. Unless Michigan gets in foul trouble or they shoot 55 from 3, they're not winning this game.
You're selling me on it, man. I'm wondering if it gets even lower with all this money coming in on UC San Diego. So
I'm waiting.
Yeah. I think Michigan's going to be a play for sure. Great point. And like I said, it's UC San Diego that pays because Michigan should be a 3 seed. Wisconsin probably should be a 4 seed after what they did today. Also with the bad loss against Penn State at the end, I think they moved down to a 4 seed. But either way, it's just the way it is. And complain as much as you want. We're going to watch college basketball, so it don't matter. Let's talk a little bit about easiest to hardest. And so I'm gonna ask you first, and I'll give you mine. Looking at these quadrants, I'm gonna share my screen here, and then obviously, actually, no, I'm not gonna share it just yet. I don't want to show you my bracket. What's the hardest bracket, or what's the easiest bracket?
Well, first look, I didn't get a lot of time early. I just got a little time in the last hour. My easiest bracket is actually going to be the Midwest. I think Tennessee's defense can pull through a little bit, and Houston's defense, I think that'd be a good matchup. Obviously, Houston's running to roadblocks, but they're going to have one right away in the round of 32, I think. I don't think Georgia knocks off Gonzaga, and the metrics on Gonzaga are just as good as anybody else in this bracket as an 8 seed. So if they're an 8 seed and you look down the line after everybody else, Illinois has had injury and consistency issues. It's a 6 seed. Kentucky's lost a ton of games in the SEC. They got beat at home by Arkansas. I think this is probably the weakest bracket. And if we see some other teams come out of there banging around, Clemson obviously played really well in the ACC, but I'm not high on the ACC. So I think Houston's got the easiest route if they get by Gonzaga. So that would be my easiest bracket.
I have them the second easiest. So I'm close to you, but I just think that Auburn got the best draw. And the reason they got the best draw, and don't get me wrong, Creighton could be very tricky when they play Creighton, but they're not hot right now and they get this easy of a draw. Now, even though Michigan is a little bit underseeded, it's still Auburn's better than Michigan. They do have the size to play against Michigan, but let's go down. Iowa State's got their best player that's not going to play in the NCAA tournament. Also, Lipsy, their other guy, is also been injured, and he's probably going to play, but he's going to be not his full self. So Keyshawn Gilbert out of the tournament. Taman Lipsy probably out or playing at 70%, something like that. So that's great for the 3 seed. You look at the 2 seed, Michigan State. I mean, we know they were kind of fugazi all year. They have good numbers on KenPom because they ran through the Big Ten. But, this is a team that they went on their bad stretch. They lost to USC, UCLA, Indiana. Their losses have been pretty bad. And, beating the Big Ten teams, not that impressive to me. As a matter of fact, John, I don't know if any Big Ten teams deserves to be a 2 or 3. But to be honest with you, when it comes to filling out your bracket, though, the best thing to do to win might be to pick Big Ten teams because everyone's fading them, right? So I think the easiest is the Auburn side of the bracket, and Marquette. Marquette could be even the one that sneaks up and plays them in the Elite Eight game.
Sure. Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Well, what's your 2 hardest?
The hardest for me is the West. My national championship pick that I wanted going into this before they, somehow winning the SEC tournament and going on a huge run. Florida's the team that I'm looking at as the best in the nation, hands down right now for me. Bad loss against Georgia on the road by 5 points, and Georgia obviously filled it up that game, and a bad loss at Tennessee on the road where they couldn't score and had 1 injury. But they're the team that I wanted to pick to win the whole thing until the bracket came out. Now you're looking at the group that they got to play, and you got St. John's, who's running through everybody, running great, the best defense in the country. Maryland, though they didn't do real well against Michigan at the end of that game, and they should have won that game, by the way, 3 different times. They're probably my pick out of all the Big Ten teams that could play with anybody at the top of the SEC. And then you get Texas Tech.
Has a chance.
Yeah, Texas Tech, obviously they struggle a little bit in conference, but I think they've got the horses to compete with those teams. So that would be my toughest. Texas Tech, I think is, I got to look it up here. Yeah, they're at 7 in KenPom right now. Didn't look great against Arizona. We both bet that game, I think, on the wrong side of things. Lost to Houston, lost to Arizona, but their bad loss is at TCU by 3 points. Everybody else in the Big 12 that they played home and away, they won the games that they should have. They got beat by Arizona twice. Iowa State in overtime by 1. Their consistency has been really, really good this year. So I think the top 4 seeds in that bracket or in that quadrant are the ones that stand out far and away above the best. All 4 of those teams I could put going, okay, if these guys were spread out as 2 or 3 seeds somewhere else, they could make it to the Final Four.
100%. I thought they were missing a few guys. I have to double check that against TCU or one of their games that they lost. I love how
Texas
they went.
Tech,
Yeah, they went to Houston, beat them, even in overtime, still beat them. When an away team does that, that makes a statement. It's like, oh, we're going to overtime. Looks like the home team's going to win. Nope, Texas Tech took it from them. Then they will go to Houston when they were injured and lost. But or they went. Sorry, at home they lost. But Texas Tech's the most dangerous team there. Their perimeter defense lacks a little bit, but they're a very complete team. 6th in adjusted efficiency, 37. And I agree with you. The West is by far the hardest. Maryland is, I think, the most complete team in the Big Ten and could be the best team in the Big Ten. If they played Wisconsin, Wisconsin wouldn't have been favored by 4.5 freaking points. It probably would have been 2 or 1 or pick them.
I think Maryland would have been favored in that game or a pick 'em.
Yeah,
I
I would have
really
bet
do.
Maryland. I would have bet Maryland actually, more or less, rather than just hedge my future like I did. But yeah, this bracket is ridiculous because Florida is the best team right now, as flags hurting a little bit. In my opinion, too. We talked about it a little bit once. And then right away, Florida, guess what? You get to play UConn or Oklahoma. But UConn, it's like it's not like UConn's that great this year, but you still have the champion coach. You still have, Dan Hurley. You got the team that just won 2 in a row. They're not going to want to go out early. It's like you got the champ there. And then yeah, it's just really two. St. John's, the hottest team right now. Texas Tech and Maryland. Oh my God, this is easily the hardest bracket. And then the second hardest, Shawn, we both agree, I guess, with the East. Because you got Duke on top, and then I expect Flag to be back, if not the first game, the second game in the tournament. And then you got St. Mary's, the 7th seed, that's sneaky. You got 2 Alabama, that's really good. I mean, Alabama, one of my picks to win it all early January. You have Wisconsin there, who's you beat anybody and lose to anybody. And then you have Arizona, who's been damn good. So this is another tough bracket. I feel like Arizona should have been on the side with like a Houston or an Auburn, and especially Alabama. Why don't you throw Alabama back in there? So that would have been a nice rematch in that quadrant too. So total agreement here. We just are just a little bit mixed up on the ones, but we're pretty close anyway. Let's talk about a bracket then. And you probably didn't fill one out yet, right? Because you were slander.
I got it up. I got it up in front of me, so I got a pretty good idea who I'm going to put in a bracket. But yeah.
Well, I'll share my screen, and believe it or not, this is the first time I've ever done something like this. Shawn, I have all four number 1 seeds in the Final Four. I feel like Joe freaking Public, man. But dude, I just thought Auburn got such an easy draw. And I thought, I mean, if Texas Tech was on the Auburn side as a 3 seed, it would have been no thinker for me, if Alabama was on the Auburn side, or if even Tennessee, the way Auburn's been playing, but man, they get Michigan State or Ole Miss or Iowa State that's injured, Jesus. So unfortunately, I literally got to all those, and it sucks because I didn't want to be like that, but I just wanted to get that out of the way, Shawn, that I did get on that. And are you going to have some 1 seeds in?
Yeah, just looking at it right away, I don't hate where you're going with that. I think obviously Florida would be my pick to win the national championship if they were in an easier bracket, but I could certainly see St. John's or Texas Tech sneaking out of that side. That would be the one region where I would probably go the other way. And Duke is still a question mark for me. No matter whether Flag is ready or not, right? So ACC, not spectacular. They're the 5th best conference in the country, right? SEC's 1, Big Ten's 2, Big 12's 3. I have the Big East ahead of ACC as far as conference rankings go for myself. So if you're going to look at that and you look at who Duke played outside of that, got the big win early against Arizona. They beat Auburn right early in the year when they were healthy. But everything else other than that Illinois game, they won by 40 when Illinois was injured and still recovering from the sickness that went through at Wisconsin. It's just the run-of-the-mill ACC. And they showed up a little bit today or yesterday. I was on Louisville, and we got away from them a little bit late. But the rest of their wins are just against the ACC, which isn't that good of a conference. So they lost to Clemson on the road, only played them once. I think Duke can be had. So that would be the other one where I'd look for something else. And if I got to go somewhere, it's not Alabama. It's not Wisconsin. It's Arizona, I think, can still sneak out and get somebody on that side. Alabama's defense hasn't really performed well against top teams. They've struggled, especially down the stretch on the defensive side of the ball. They play fast. Obviously, they're I think they might be the fastest team in the nation. Let me pull that up quick. Yeah, the adjusted tempo. They're the top fastest team in the nation. And when you're running that fast, if you're not picking people up coming back down the court when things happen, which they've struggled against, but you look at the teams they lost to: Auburn, Missouri, Tennessee, Florida, and Florida again. So it's not like they're losing to bad teams, but teams that can fill it up and get up and down the court with them a little bit, they're struggling with. But if I'm going to take another number 1 seed to fall, it would be Duke. I think Houston's got that bracket covered. I really do. And I hate to say it, I don't want to buy them again for the 3rd year in a row in that Calcutta. But one of these times, that defense, that pace, and the way that group plays is going to come out and get there and get it done. And I think this is the year with the bracket draw that they have. Big 12 was a lot better team. They took care of everything. Only loss in overtime at home against Texas Tech. They took care of them the second time. Handled Arizona, BYU, Colorado in the tournament. Beat Iowa State when they were actually still healthy back a couple weeks ago. Houston, I think, is getting through. I think Auburn's getting through. It's Duke and Florida I'm worried about. And like I said, I still think Florida's the best team in the country right now.
Yeah, I agree. The bracket's the hardest with Florida. That's why I do have them winning it all in this one. I mean, I'll stand by this one as my main bracket, but I think that if I fill out another one, I will be pulling Florida out, throwing a Maryland in there or a Texas Tech or St. John's in there. And then Duke on this side, to be honest with you, Arizona's great until the end when Caleb Love has an important game. So I think I could see them in the Elite Eight losing. Maybe they get revenge if they do face Wisconsin. So here's the weird thing about me. I have Wisconsin getting to the Elite Eight. And it's stupid probably. But the thing is that when you shot that freaking bad, you got 4 days to think about it. It's going to be bugging the crap out of you. I think that gets them past Montana and maybe even BYU. BYU, very good team. Could absolutely beat Wisconsin, but I don't know. I think that if Alabama faces Wisconsin, you have two kind of inconsistent type teams, but Alabama faces so much. Wisconsin can find their shot, and once they find their shot, it starts hitting, I watched Alabama kind of play hard against Rutgers this year earlier in the non-con, and Rutgers kept with them. It's about hitting threes when it's against Alabama, and it's also about defending threes. It's not like the ball gets rebounded so hard that it's not necessarily the tall team that you have to worry about completely as much. It's like Wisconsin might be able to rebound a little bit in that game,
And Wisconsin's got the bigs inside to play with them, and they've struggled with size, right? Florida, the big bangers, the guys that are getting up and down the court and getting all those rebounds. Alabama's only got one guy, and I can pull that up too. I think they only got one player that's above 6'9", and they're starting. What'd you say?
Cliff Omoyuri, the transfer from Rutgers, is what they have. Yeah.
Yep.
And he's terrible at the rim too.
Mm-hmm. So they've got 3, 6, 11 guys as I'm looking at it now, but only 2 of them are playing in the regular rotation. They're not going to be able to extend out either if Wisconsin gets going and they start shooting threes with the big guys outside. They're going to be up and down, finding the guy trailing. So I actually like that matchup if it does happen. But I'm not high on Alabama, I guess, is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no, then that's fair enough. So enough said. So here's some things, looking at the 5-12 upsets, and this is subject to change for me because I just filled it out. I did pick Michigan over UC San Diego, like you mentioned. I got Michigan going to the Sweet 16 and losing to Auburn. I had Liberty beating Oregon until I saw that they're playing in Washington. They're playing like Seattle. So, I mean, that's just way too close for Oregon and too easy situation for them. So I kind of decided to keep that 5-12. But I almost had all of them because I think McNeese State bounces Clemson. I am not high on the ACC. And neither was the committee, clearly, because this Clemson's the second highest seed at 5 in this. And I see McNeese, who's been there last year, getting through. And I think they do. And then another 5-12 upset, Colorado State versus Memphis. Why not? They're favored.
Well, I was going to say, that's not really an upset at that point, is it?
Not really. From a seed wise, it is, but it's just such a stupid seeding from the committee. Then, Memphis is a weird team, and they're inconsistent. And they got talent, but this Penny's just not that good of a coach, I don't think. And I see Colorado State getting through this one. And so, I have some other big upsets. Like, I think I have Purdue getting bounced too. And not these are kind of tells where I look to bet, but it looks like some money already came in on High Point.
On High Point, yep.
Purdue's it was 9.5. It's 8.5. I'm gonna wait on it and see what happens. I think High Point could bounce Purdue, so 13-4 upset right there. What else we have? Do you have any upsets?
From the 5-12 perspective, as you're going through those, I actually like Liberty as that one that could do it. I'm not high on High Point. I don't think they've beaten enough teams where I want to put them in a Big Ten banger with Purdue. Colorado State, like you said, I don't think that's an upset. I'm still on Colorado State. But Michigan is definitely going through. If you're looking at upsets, again, we just talked about our Badgers. The East is going to be a teams that run and gun. BYU's a mountain team. They're playing in Denver at elevation. The Badgers just got done playing 4 days. They get 3 days rest. They'd be 6 days away from that right now. I don't hate BYU against the Badgers in a run and gun if it gets to 180 points. That means BYU's going to be there.
Sure.
As far as true upsets go for things I like, here's one for you that I hate because I hate talking about them, but I think Drake can hang with anybody. Not anybody. Sorry, with Missouri coming out of there just because of the way they play. They play that slow down, knock them down, drag them out.
Your connection's getting a little bit bad, Sean. I think it might be your plug. It was a little staticky too. Maybe just try to grab that. But yeah, I think Drake. You're right on that. I mean, it's not a big spread either. It's 5.5, 6.5. They might hang for a while against Missouri. They could possibly win that one, 6-11.
They beat Vanderbilt in the holiday tournament earlier in the year. They beat Kansas State on a neutral court or semi-away court or whatever they call it in overtime. So they've got a couple of wins that they can showcase. Only loss, bad one, would be Murray State and Illinois Chicago right at the start of the conference season for them. So I think Drake at 30-3 is one that I'd look at because I wasn't really high in Missouri. They're really high KenPom ranked and Haslametrics, but getting the six seed out there is a 15 in KenPom. But again, they closed out poorly, right? You lose to Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and get bounced in the tournament. So they've struggled down the stretch against better teams, and Drake could come in and slow them down, and I think they got a shot to knock them off. That would be the one double-digit seed I really actually like right now.
All right, well there you go, Drake. I like. Don't hate the Drake where they're at because they could do some upsetting over there. What's up, King? Thanks for chiming in, Chris. Thanks for coming in, buddy.
Hey, Las Vegas Chris is here. Hey, buddy.
Yep, he's actually in Thailand right now, walking around. I think it's morning right now in Thailand, so he's trying to find breakfast. I wish we can just film him and watch him try to find breakfast. That would already make my day. It'd be like a reality show. I think there's going to be some other teams causing some problems. Like I don't think Yale necessarily wins, but I'll tell you this: Texas A&M's a bad free throw team, bad shooting team. They're a bad favorite in general. I even St. John's can have some troubles against Omaha. There's some dogs I'm looking to bet that I might not be picking in advance, but there's quite a few in there. I think that if you look at this Midwest bracket, I got Illinois once again going to the Elite Eight and losing to Houston. I think Illinois got the guns to beat Tennessee, and Tennessee doesn't scare me too much. I think they're too inconsistent of a shooting team. Illinois, kind of the opposite. Their defense sucks, but their offense is really good. But Illinois got some good talent there now, and I could see Illinois getting a little bit farther.
Yeah, I was just talking about those a couple boys, and I got some crap for it after they got bounced by Maryland. I think Illinois, if they're actually healthy and they're playing together, they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Their bad loss in the Big Ten was USC at home, and then they had the stretch where they weren't healthy. Lost at Nebraska away, lost at Rutgers away, got beat by Michigan State and Wisconsin. And for the most part of the year, most part of the Big Ten season, they weren't at 100%. And sure, did they lay an egg against Maryland the other day? Yeah, absolutely they did. But if they come into this tournament healthy, I don't hate that at all, Kiev. I think they can make some noise.
Absolutely, they can make some noise, and that could be a dangerous, one for Houston. So we'll look a little bit more about that. Chris says it's 11 a.m. Or is that okay?
So he's ready for lunch.
Now with how late he wakes up. Let's move on to some bets, man. I already made a few bets. I had a couple lines go against. I had one big one go against me. I have some ones that are kind of turning and there. I think they're going to be on my side. But I'll start out with one, Shawn. I like Georgia, and I took plus 6.5 on Georgia. On DraftKings, they're 6.5 minus 115. I got minus 102 on FanDuel. I think that still might be there. This is just a fade against Gonzaga. They won their tournament. They finally beat St. Mary's. Take a breather. And Gonzaga's not bad. I just don't think they're the 8th or 9th best team in the land. On KenPom, they've been struggling this year. They have some bad losses. Every time they stepped up against competition, they lost to West Virginia. They lost to Kentucky. They lost to UConn. They lost to USA. Their best win in the non-con is Indiana or San Diego State, or maybe Baylor, the very first game of the season.
Well, very first game of the year, and Baylor wasn't altogether yet by 40. I mean, that was a blowout. But yeah, first game of the season. I'm not as high on Gonzaga as most people. I'm right there with you. They're a good team, but are they the 9th best team in the country? Committee doesn't think so. I don't think so. And you're going to go up against an SEC team that's got a couple guys that can shoot from 3. If they're filling up, I think they can definitely knock them off.
100%. I also think that Georgia is, a very balanced team as well. And that's what you're going to go against, a Georgia team that's already got some pedigree. They beat, teams like at Florida. That was a pretty awesome game, but it was choked away. But still, they won. They got the lead back with a minute left. And that's huge when you can do that. And so yeah, that's one that I took already. So one of my best bets for early line. Shawn, do you have one?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. We already gave one out. I think Michigan's going to handle San Diego just fine. Playing games, and I've been riding them all weekend, and I'm sticking with it. Mount St. Mary's figured out a way to play without 2 of their top guys on the roster. They're going to get one back, it sounds like, for Tuesday. And I certainly think they're going to continue to roll. They're playing with confidence. You're playing in the playing game. You just ran through a conference tournament where you weren't supposed to make any noise, and here you are as a 2.5-point dog. They're going to get a little money line action from me and the 2.5. The other one I'm playing is BYU. Playing at elevation. VCU just got done with a deep tournament run. Obviously, they won the conference. Going out to Denver at elevation on a Thursday, 4 days later. I'm laying the 2.5 with BYU to sink VCU early. I think they're just going to blow them out of the water with offense. Something like a 50-35 first half. And then the other one I'm playing is Colorado State. They're hot. They've been good in the Mountain West. The American hasn't done anything. Memphis hasn't shown up. Haven't been playing well versus poor competition. So those are the 3 I'm looking at right away. Or 4, I guess I gave you. Michigan, yeah. Colorado State, Mount St. Mary's, and BYU.
I like it. There we go. I'll be on BYU for sure. I got to look into that Mount St. Mary's one a little bit. We were talking about that one a few times this week, just texting. And yeah, Mount St. Mary's is going to be a massive dog here, probably. Or do their first play in American?
First playing, so they're only a 2.5-point dog. But if you're doing that stuff without your 2 best players, you got other guys that have now played in games that are meaningful and have been part of the rotation. Now you're getting healthy against a team that's not that much better than you, and you've been playing pretty good in the in the what is it? They're in the MAAC. I get the MEAC and the MAC confused, but down the stretch they've played great. They've only lost 3 games since February, so they're one that I'm rolling with.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. That's a good one. We'll be on them as well, probably on Tuesday. Let's look at this BYU game. I was really thinking about betting them too, and I think that the first game, they can win by margin because they play fast and obviously points compile when you get more possessions, as long as you're not completely screwing up. I think BYU is a team that's been really hot and it has a great hot finish. So I agree with you on doing that one. So I'm taking Yale plus 7.5, and I don't know if that one gets better or not. Maybe if you even wait it out, and that's the problem. It's like you can take it. I think if you're going to take the dog, you either take it right away or you wait it out. I think there's going to be some pressure on the dogs by some of the early bettors on Monday, but then it's just going to kind of sit there in limbo all the way to Thursday in game time, and then the public gets in, and I think that most in general. Not all of them. There's public dogs, but in general, the numbers are going to start growing again. So definitely not terrible to wait on some of these dogs. But I think that Yale is just a team that can upset Texas A&M. I've seen Texas A&M just be too inconsistent, this year in game, and they've been just terrible really down the stretch. I think they finally got one big win recently here. And they're overranked on Ken Palmer.
Well, they beat Auburn at home when Auburn had nothing to play for. So
yeah, Auburn had nothing to play for, and it's not like Auburn's been great since then either.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what the win was. That kind of is tricking everybody, in my opinion. But this Texas A&M team, rough loss at home to Vanderbilt. Their inconsistency is terrible. They can't block shots. They rebound really well. They play chuck and get. That's what they do. They chuck the ball up and they get it. But Yale's got a couple dudes, a 6'10" guy, Samson, Elatan, and Simmons is a pretty good rebounder. Not the greatest rebounders, but they hit their shots. And I think that they're going to hit the shots kind of like we've seen in the past. One thing about Yale, man, they've been in this big dance for many years now. James Jones has been a great coach, and they had an upset recently. I don't know if it was 2024, 2023. Oh, they beat Auburn last year. That's who it was.
Last year.
They beat Auburn last year. So why would they not turn it up for Texas A&M? And so I can see Yale covering, maybe getting past them, but yeah, I think it's a close game.
Yeah, I'm probably going to stay away from that one. I just, Ivy League's performed well. Like you said, last year they beat Auburn. Cornell gave Wisconsin a game a couple years ago. So they've shown up, but they're non-conference again. Haven't played anybody where I can go, okay, this team can hang. And 7.5 against the Texas A&M team that I think is going to, probably lock them up on the defensive end. I'm going to stay away because I think it could be a game where Yale tries to speed it up, even though they're not normally a fast team, especially if they get down early. So I'm going to stay away, but it's certainly a good look for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't hate it.
Okay.
Let me ask you one question before we close out, because you always get to send the agenda. I want to give you one more. If you had to look at all the number one seeds and who they're playing in the 8-9 matchups, I'm putting you on the spot here. Sorry, Kiev. Number one seeds against an 8-9 matchup. Which 8-9 matchup team do you think is the most likely to knock off a number one seed where they're not going to make it to the second weekend?
8-9 matchup that's most likely to knock out a number one seed. I mean, you could say Louisville Creighton because of the way Auburn's playing, but I would probably say Gonzaga, Georgia.
Yep, don't hate that at all.
It's a good question, actually.
For me, it's Louisville. Played tough with Duke for most of that game. They're playing in Lexington, so if they get through Creighton, which I'm not saying they're going to do, you got a home crowd advantage against a team that's been struggling comparatively. Obviously, Auburn had a great run for most of the year. I think Louisville, with basically a home game in round 2 against a team that's dropped a couple here, could actually go in and make something happen. And Bruce Pearl has had some struggles in the NCAA tournament, right? He had his great run when he was the coach of Milwaukee, but he's also lost quite a few games that he's not supposed to. So I think if Louisville gets past Creighton and plays Auburn in that game, and our boy Chucky Hepburn shows up, I think Louisville could actually beat Auburn in that second round game.
God, just an hour drive from Rupp Arena.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the first
Well,
game too.
not Rupp, Louisville.
Right, but Louisville's playing in Lexington.
Playing in Rupp Arena. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, and that's pretty close, and that's why they're gonna
They're gonna have a home crowd.
The Creighton game, they're gonna have a home crowd too. For the most part, most Creighton fans just try to come there. Like they sure didn't show up against St. John's though, did they?
No.
It was all St. John's there. God, they were close that game, but they just got bounced. And that's a good show there. I agree. Louisville, very, very much at home for the first weekend, and that's huge. And that's I guess that's the one bad thing about Auburn's bracket is you can say, well, hey, they're more away from home than others, and now they're playing a Louisville team that's going to have a bigger home crowd than them, most likely. I would think, unless Auburn fans are going to travel great. So I like the question here. I'm going to give one more play here, and this is I took Oklahoma plus 4.5 against UConn. I don't know why it's 4.5. I mean, I was looking for some injuries. There's that one injury on Oklahoma, but that happened a couple weeks ago. Big man, and he was bad. It's like I watched a lot of fans from Oklahoma say, "I'm really glad he's not playing the past few weeks." And to be honest with you, Oklahoma's been winning without him. So I'm like, geez, he must have sucked. But it's 4.5. I mean,
Mount St. Mary's is Oklahoma. I get it.
UConn has just not been UConn, the UConn that we know. Everyone's gone except for couple guys. Caravan, right? That's it. Caravan. I have to pull up their team because I'm not great with names, but they're 35th on KenPom. I mean, Oklahoma's 38th, and it's not like KenPom's the Bible, but all these efficiency sites have this as about a pick 'em. I don't know why it's 4.5 because their name's UConn. Oklahoma fought hard to get to this tournament. Maybe that's where they run out of gas, but losing Kentucky by 1 point is no shame. Beating Georgia in the first game, going to Texas and beating them when Texas was trying to get in, winning against Missouri. And you look at the games before, they have a loss by 3 points in the SEC, and another Kentucky loss by 1 point, a win against Mississippi State by 6 points. They finished really hot. Since the Florida double-digit loss, they finished really hot. I mean, why not take 4.5 with Oklahoma here? I mean,
yeah. And the size problem isn't really an issue. You can only run 6'10", 6'10" across the front court when they play. And if Georgia's missing Oklahoma's missing Godwin, they've still got two other guys that are 6'10", 6'11" that can get in the rotation or are in the rotation. So it's not a size issue with the injury. So I don't hate that at all. Should be a pick 'em, absolutely.
All right, my man. It should be a pick 'em. I do agree. Well, there you have it, man. We have lots to do this week. We have bracket challenges. We're going to have some plays out. I'm going to grab a couple quadrants. I think Shawn's going to grab a quadrant too, and Wes will grab a quadrant over at the Odds Breakers. We'll put out a play or a lean on the games, and I'm just going to do a couple sentences per game, and just tell you why or why not I'm on something, and or where I'm going to lean, and there's just going to be like that throughout the tournament. So check us out at theoddsbreakers.com, and Shawn. And where could our listeners get your great info?
I'm right at the website you're talking about, theoddsbreakers.com, and Twitter at the Great Kanaki. Best part about March Madness for me is we're leading right into my best season, which is MLB baseball, buddy. Can't wait. I'm not going to have a lot for season previews. It's going to be 2 short articles, one National League, one American League, coming out late this week, giving you some future bets on both divisions and possibly some World Series stuff. We didn't hit last year, but we did hit World Series 2023 and had 4 or 6 division winners. Last year we went, on futures 7-1 for over-unders on wins. So I'll have some of that stuff for you. Got that all ready. So I'm excited for baseball. I'm a baseball guy. I love March Madness, but the best part about March Madness is baseball's right around the corner.
Yeah, there you go. It's perfect for Shawn. He heads into his main season now. So we got to love that. Shawn, thanks a lot. We'll be texting this week, my man.
Thanks, Kiev.